Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a story that affects millions and millions of lives every single day. The complex, century-long evolution of work and workers' rights, right here in India.
Okay, so let's just dive right in by asking a really fundamental question. When you think about any workplace, doesn't matter if it's a factory floor or a shiny new tech startup, who really has the upper hand? The employer or the employee?
You know, this constant tug of war in the workplace actually has a name: industrial relations. And you can think of it as the official rulebook for a negotiation that pretty much never ends.
Now, this isn't just about big, dramatic conflicts. Industrial relations covers pretty much everything, from the day you get your job offer to your retirement party. We're talking your salary, your safety on the job, and the whole process for when things go wrong. It's kind of like the invisible architecture of our entire working lives.
And right here, this is where you can really see that core tension in action. On one side, you've got businesses that, of course, need to be productive and profitable. And on the other, you have workers who need fair pay, job security, and to be safe. Now, these two sets of goals aren't necessarily enemies, but they're not always best friends either. And that constant push and pull is what shapes almost every single workplace.
So, when you're faced with this kind of imbalance, how could a single worker ever hope to negotiate? Well, they realized they couldn't. The solution was to organize, because, while one voice can easily be ignored, a whole chorus is pretty much impossible to dismiss.
And this, of course, led to the creation of trade unions. Their core purpose has always been super simple: to give workers a unified voice, which allows them to negotiate on a much more equal footing with management.
This whole thing became official with the Trade Unions Act of 1926. And this was a landmark moment, truly. All of a sudden, unions weren't just informal groups anymore. They were legally recognized entities with actual defined rights. A worker who joined one was now protected by law. This gave them the teeth they really needed to negotiate effectively.
But hey, giving unions legal standing doesn't just make conflicts disappear. Disagreements are, well, they're inevitable. And when they escalate into full-blown strikes or factory lockouts, everything can grind to a halt.
So, how do you solve these disputes without everything falling apart all the time? Well, the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947 created what you can think of as a ladder of escalation. The whole idea was to start soft, with facilitated talks. If that fails, okay, you bring in a formal board. Still no agreement? Then it goes to an official inquiry. And only as a very last resort does a court step in and make a final binding decision. It's a system designed to force a resolution before it paralyzes an entire industry.
The ultimate goal of this entire process, really, is something called collective bargaining. This is the big one. It's where worker representatives and management actually sit down at a table to hash out a contract covering wages, hours, working conditions that both sides can agree on for a certain amount of time.
All right, so beyond the day-to-day disputes, another huge piece of this puzzle started to emerge: protecting workers from life's major curveballs, like getting sick, growing old, or getting injured. And over time, India gradually built a really comprehensive social safety net through a whole series of landmark laws.
Just look at how this safety net was built, literally piece by piece in the decades right after India's independence. First, you get basic safety with the Factories Act, then planning for the future with retirement funds, then support for families with maternity leave, and finally, a reward for loyalty with gratuity payments. It's like each law was a new patch fixing a specific hole in a worker's security.
So today, these elements make up the 5 key pillars of Social Security for workers in the formal sector. It's a system that's really designed to provide a cushion against life's biggest challenges, from a sudden illness during your career to making sure you have an income long after you've retired.
Now, after nearly a century of adding law on top of law on top of law, the system had become, incredibly complex. It was fragmented, and all of that led to a massive effort to simplify and modernize the entire framework.
And this was a monumental task. It involved taking 29 different and often overlapping central labor laws
And streamlining them all down into these 4 comprehensive codes. Each code now bundles together all the previous laws related to that specific area. So one for wages, one for industrial relations, one for Social Security, and one for workplace safety. It's easily the biggest overhaul of Indian labor law in decades. And that brings us to the final and really crucial question. This massive change was meant to simplify the system for everybody, for both employers and employees. But will it actually lead to progress and better conditions? Or is rewriting the entire rulebook just going to open up a whole new chapter of conflict and negotiation in the Indian workers' long journey? That's the big debate that's happening right now.